Austin Simmons struggled in scrimmage number one, and that may have been by design from Lane Kiffin. We'll explain.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're talking about scrimmage rumors, who's flashing and who had a day they would like to forget. Izaiah Hartrup continues to follow the Dayton Wade track at wide receiver, and Ole Miss Jack, linebacker, was unblockable at times during the scrimmage, but meanwhile, the offensive line still kind of looks like a work in progress. We will explain why. But first, Austin Simmons had a rough outing with 2 pick sixes in the first scrimmage. It sounds bad, right? Well, we tell you why, honestly, that it might actually be a good thing for him and this team. All of that and more right now on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. And that is the most fun way to follow Ole Miss sports. So do us a favor, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It costs absolutely nothing, but keeps all of this free. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you and available at the click of a button. And coming up on Ole Miss Trivia, the clue today is Tulane 1989. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so it started going around after the scrimmage that Austin Simmons threw 2 pick sixes. And I confirmed it through my sources. Yes, he threw 2 pick sixes, one of which was Suntarine Perkins. Congratulations to him. But this is why you shouldn't be panicking. And this is why, if you are a ball knower, you're not panicking at what happened today. I will explain all of that. So Austin Simmons has been hyped up for the better part of 8 months coming into this season. He was a machine. They talked about SEC Media Days. He's listed as the number 13 player on the Heisman ballot in the preseason, and he's never started a game. He is getting all the hype. You listen to my show, you see he is getting all of the hype. But to ground him, to do what needs to be done, I think Lane Kiffin is doing a little bit of coach stuff in this. And this is what I mean by that. No other position on the field is more susceptible to the coaches scripting a good day or a bad day than the quarterback. We don't know why Austin Simmons threw those interceptions. We don't know why there might be accuracy problems. I think it was On 3 that talked about him being inaccurate during the week. We don't know why those things are occurring. It could be Austin. It could be the fact that the wide receiver was at 12 yards instead of 11. It could be the fact that they were a little bit slow coming out of their feet. There were false steps coming out of their break. There were several things that could happen that could cause inaccuracy, and only one of them is due to a bad throw from the quarterback. So we can't assume that this is due to bad accuracy, off accuracy. We can't assume anything about those other than the fact that there were interceptions thrown and it was taken back for a touchdown in the practice. That's what we can assume from Austin Simmons' day in the first scrimmage in the interception. What I know, and I've reached out to all of my sources that are around that might have seen what happened. There was a good number of people there. Coaches do have the ability to script that. And we don't know entirely if Austin Simmons, when he's in the game, if the offense is running against a defense that's running 300 level plays, literally trying to stop, and the backups are running 100 level plays, if that makes sense. And it would make sense that it's happening because Lane Kiffin has been in game mode, getting Austin Simmons ready mode for months at this point. So they're absolutely could be different defenses and trying to confuse Austin Simmons and trying to play games with his head to get him ready for Arkansas and Kentucky and even Georgia State as the season is coming up. That could be a very real thing. The offense is calling plays specifically to where if they end up in the game and they're calling something, they don't see something, the defense can have the advantage. They can outflank the offense. They could do something like that to hurt Austin Simmons, and how will he react to those situations? Coaches have been doing that for 100 years, trying to break the quarterback and get them game ready. And that is what I think Lane Kiffin is doing. He is trying to get Austin Simmons as game ready through practice reps as possible. And if you think about it, that's what practice is for. This isn't a scenario to where the backup quarterback is in there and the third string quarterback, and you're competing actually for the job, to where you're splitting reps, to everybody is running essentially the same offense in practice. This is a little bit different because when Austin's in the game, his series in these scrimmage that's happened, you might be running plays against the defense that's more advanced. You can maybe running more advanced offensive plays. There's a lot of stuff going on because you want Austin to see as many things as possible before the Georgia State game, before the Kentucky game, before the Arkansas game. Because this season, even more so than last year, there's some pretty big games coming up on the horizon. So we will see exactly how Austin Simmons prepares. This first game, he threw pick sixes. Okay, whatever. It's like a preseason game in the NFL. I'm not necessarily worried about that. The problem develops if that leads to a second game and to a third game, and you go into the first game of the season to where Austin's confidence is a little bit down. Usually what happens in this scenario is the head coach and the offensive coordinator scripts a bad performance in the first scrimmage for the quarterback, especially a quarterback that has developed hype. He scripts a easier scrimmage at the end to build his confidence up so he'd be ready to go. Now is the point where they're trying to figure out what they're going to have at quarterback and honestly at the offensive line. I think Jaden Williams was in a black jersey over the course of this scrimmage. PJ Wilkins, I think Chuck Rounsaville of the Ole Miss Spirit talked about that. If Austin Simmons is a new person on their blind side and everything's going on, it genuinely feels like Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss was trying to put as much on Austin Simmons as humanly possible to see exactly what would happen. Austin Simmons did end up throwing a touchdown. Austin Simmons is going to be fine. He's going to be the starting quarterback. He is going to be very good at it. But these scrimmages are put in place to stress young quarterbacks. And that's what they obviously did yesterday. And because of that, Austin got confused a couple of times, threw a couple of pick sixes. He's a young quarterback that is constantly learning. He is still at the point to where when he's looking out of the defense, something new pops up that he hasn't seen before. We're not dealing with Jackson Dart as a fifth-year senior or whatever he was. We're not dealing with Matt Corral in his third year in the system. We are dealing with a quarterback that is young. 2022 Jackson Dart. That is what we are dealing with. Now, I do think that Austin Simmons has the ability to be a 1-1 quarterback by the time he's done. And the 2026 season has a chance to be really, really special. But there are going to be hiccups this year. The trick is overcoming them and not doing the hiccups in the exact wrong place. It's going to come down to timing. It's going to come down to things like that. It's going to come down to running the ball, catching the ball, making the plays that are there to be made. If they can do that, they're going to be a very good team. If they don't, they're going to be an 8-4 level team. It's going to either be 2023 or 2022. Austin has been in the system. This is his third year. All the terminology and everything should not surprise him. So if after the second scrimmage, this happens again, then the panicking can kind of start a little bit. Then the panicking can kind of lift up because you can start to worry about the beginning of the season. One game, 1 week, one scrimmage, no, it doesn't pop up And this was, if I'm not mistaken, the first opportunity that Austin Simmons had to play as the guy and the hype with people actually watching the practice, because it was the M Club scrimmage. Again, don't worry. I think it was probably a good thing that something like this happened, and it might have actually been planned as well. That's what I'm going to stick with on that. Now, Princewill Umanmielen flashed shades of his brother yesterday, and the Battle of the Trenches kind of stole the show. We'll break all of that down next. You know, we've all been there, logging in early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot in the line for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets easier and faster than ever. Prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime with their killer last-minute deals. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows an actual panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. So take the game work out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we're reacting to Ole Miss's first scrimmage of the season. We talked at length about Austin Simmons in the first segment, but let's talk about some good things that happened. And there were several good things that happened yesterday at the scrimmage. The first one is I got the text message that said at portions of the scrimmage, Princewill Umanmielen was virtually unblockable. And him at Jack, Suntarine Perkins playing at Jack, that position sounds like they had a very strong day. Princewill Umanmielen, a third-team All-SEC preseason guy. Now, that might have been because they saw Princewill and they thought it was Princely, but whatever, it's fine. That guy at defensive end, if he has a big year, that's only going to help Suntarine Perkins. That's only going to help the rest of the defensive line. And then you have players like Cam Franklin and Deshaun Womack on the other side. The defensive line, the front seven of this team, has a chance to be pretty good. Seriously, maybe not as good as last year, because last year had multiple players with first-round grade ability, but it's just going to be a shade below it. And Princewill Umanmielen having that type of day adds a little bit of an arrow in your quiver, if that makes sense. So something else you can do. It adds for flexibility for Suntarine Perkins. It allows the defense to kind of work to confuse the quarterback, which it obviously did in the course of Saturday's scrimmage. Princewill Umanmielen was going up likely most of the day against PJ Wilkins, who was substituting at right tackle during that event. So that means that what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks on the offensive line, ever since pads came on, is who's playing where. We talked about Dillon Townsend and PJ Wilkins in the interior at guard, turning heads. PJ Wilkins, he played tackle at Charlotte. He started out there. They moved him to right tackle after Jaden Williams was not playing. That's worth noticing what's going on. So Terez Davis ended up in the interior playing guard with the Dillon Townsend. We don't know how Bryson Sanders did, but we did hear that Xzavian Harris had a heck of a day. And if he's playing nose guard, that means that he was probably going up against Bryson Sanders, which means he might not have had the best of days. He certainly didn't have one of those days that warrants a name drop. He obviously didn't get anybody's attention. He didn't flash. That's probably not a good thing. The offensive line likely down two pieces, two very, very big pieces, and players kind of shuffled around on that unit as we see. Bryson Sanders, it doesn't sound like he had that type of day. He might have. He absolutely could, and it just slipped everybody's mind. But when it comes, we will see. Xzavian Harris is having an all SEC level camp. Honestly, a Walter Nolan level camp. Somebody 6'8", 340 pounds or something like that. Somebody that's going to be increasingly hard to move in the middle of that defense. And he is agile. He is athletics. So going up against that guy, you are not going to win those battles very often. He is going to demand a double team each and every snap on the field. The second double team is the key. I didn't hear too much about Jam Brown. I did not hear too much about William Eccles. Not saying they did poorly, just saying I didn't hear anything about those positions. But those guys, whoever wins that job moving forward, needs to force double teams. Xzavian Harris looks like he is going to be a guy that can force a double team. If that can happen with Jam Brown or William Eccles in the interior of that defensive line, this Ole Miss defense is going to be very good. Listen, defense is actually a very simple thing to play. This is the way Alabama and Georgia does it. And if you listen to my podcast 4 times in your history, you've heard me say this. Double teams by interior defensive linemen means that 4 of the 6 blockers are being taken up on the interior. They're not looking outside. They're not helping outside. They're not doing anything but making sure that these 2 game wreckers do not wreck your play. That leaves a defensive end being blocked by a tackle one-on-one, who usually that's going to be advantage defensive end, and the tight end blocking a defensive end. And if you blitz somebody, maybe send a linebacker on an A-gap blitz, it could throw everything into turmoil. So double teams on the interior of the defensive line are key to playing defense. I think the way it sits right now, Ole Miss is having to double team those players interior-wise, and the outside guys are kind of getting off, and the linebackers are playing very well. It got sent to me that Taj Chambers and TJ Daugherty had days. So all the linebackers, it said, played pretty well. And that tells me that there were double teams and not much traffic in front of them. That means they could run sideline to sideline uninhibited. Now, the secondary, just like the offensive line, going to be a problem place, is something we're going to look at. But whenever it wasn't 300 level football and people were playing, the offense kind of got off. And we are going to talk about that in the next segment. So the defense still has some work to do. I like the corners on this team. I think they can be very good. But the safeties is where, honestly, the rubber is going to meet the road. Whenever you look at playing free safety, whether that's going to be Nick Cole or Jalen Braxton or whoever they decide to put back there, Wydett Williams or Sage Ryan or whoever is going to end up around strong safety, whoever is going to end up as the slot corner, the John Saunders role from last year, replacing TJ Banks. It looks like that's going to be Kapina Gushikin. So that is where the rubber is likely going to meet the road on this defense. Now, second scrimmage is going to change up a little bit. It always does. Each and every single year, the first week of camp is all about the defense, and then the offense slowly comes on as the season gets a little bit closer. And with so many new pieces on this offense, yes, it was going to take time. Chemistry takes time to build. A little bit less time for defense, because defense can be a little bit of see ball, hit ball, or cat coverage, cover that cat. If you do stuff like that, you will be successful. The Ole Miss offense, we always talk, it's a simple offense to pick up, but there's some complexities in it that take a little bit longer, especially when running a route. Like, it's weird. If you run a post route, it's going to determine 3 or 4 different ways, depending on what the defense is doing. And the quarterback has to read that as well. But the defense absolutely won the scrimmage yesterday or Saturday. And The offense, we'll pay attention to that next week, the next preseason game, because they're constantly trying to make themselves a little bit better. I'm pretty fired up to see exactly how that goes, but that is the scenario. In our final segment, Izaiah Hartrup had another strong day with 3 touchdowns, but he wasn't the only wide receiver making plays. We'll talk about the rest of the wide receiver standouts as well. That plus some Ole Miss trivia coming up next. You don't hear too much about Deshaun Stribling, and Harrison Wallace occasionally flashes, but you don't hear too much about him. They're kind of stable. They kind of are, you know what you have with those players. And because of that, this camp has been unique because you're concentrating on the backups in that competition. Listen, there's 3 players for Ole Miss that are Blentnikoff watch list guys: Caden Lee, Harrison Wallace, and Deshaun Stribling. You know what you have with them. But right behind them are transfers that came in. Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, Traylon Ray from West Virginia, and Izaiah Hartrup from, I think, Southeast Missouri, one of the FCS Missouri schools. If I got that wrong, I apologize to Isaiah. Izaiah Hartrup has had a man camp. He absolutely has came out, put his workload in. He's acting like a second-year player, if we're going to be honest. He's heard all of the time the terminology. He just goes out and play. He ended up with 3 touchdown passes, all on go routes in the scrimmage on Saturday. It doesn't necessarily matter the quarterback, the fact that he made plays, and the fact that they made plays after Austin Simmons left the game kind of lets you know that it's not an Austin thing. It's a script thing. They wanted him to have a rough day a little bit so he continues to develop. But Izaiah Hartrup, 3 touchdowns on go routes. He is the leader in the clubhouse right now to be the punt returner. Izaiah Hartrup is making and doing all of the right things for Ole Miss offensively, and he is one of those players that's knocking on the door of playing time. Lane Kiffin talks about, hey, we finally have the depth in this room this year to substitute the way you're supposed to. I do not know that he's going to do that, okay? But he said he's going to do that. And when he says it, you at least have to acknowledge it. But they've said stuff like this before, and once the game started, once the bullets started flying, they revert it back to, hey, the first 3 are the only group that plays. But Izaiah Hartrup is having a really good camp. Everybody that watches practice sees Deshaun Stribling, Caden Lee, and Harrison Wallace, the third, lining up as the starters. And then you have the second group to where it's kind of hit or miss, honestly. But one of the stars that have popped up is the transfer from the FCS, Izaiah Hartrup. He's the guy and a name to keep an eye on if you're an Ole Miss Rebel fan. Another wide receiver that is playing well, kind of making a name for himself, is Winston Watkins, who had a couple of touchdown grabs yesterday as well. Winston Watkins is the relative of Sammy Watkins, the wide receiver that played at Clemson and in the NFL. He is a really good player and somebody, honestly, to keep an eye on with what is happening. But Winston Watkins, really good player, flashing. He's another candidate, I think, for punt return. But as punt return sits right now, the leader in the clubhouse is kind of Izaiah Hartrup. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the third name that I want to mention is somebody that I want to mention as far as working towards getting playing time. He's not necessarily expected to do it, but he's right on the cusp of making that moment. And these scrimmages are really big for him. And I'm talking, of course, by Dillon, Alfred, the wide receiver that came here from Saraland in Alabama. This is a player that's unbelievably smooth. He looks like a slot receiver playing on the outside. He looks like he does everything absolutely easy. He's getting some reps with the ones, but when you look at what he brings, he probably has a little bit of a steep hill to climb as far as experience goes over the guys like Traylon Ray, Deuce Alexander, and Izaiah Hartrup, not including the guys that are the starters, the Blintnikoff guys on the outside. But Dillon Alfred has had a really good camp. We saw, I guess, a video from Michael Katz showing him catching a touchdown pass against Air. The guy's just making plays in camp. And if you make plays in camp, you move up the depth chart, whatever it might be, in a complete hurry. And we'll see exactly what that happens. I think there was a wide receiver at Ole Miss that got a couple of reps in the first couple of games that nobody was really expecting to do it. But once he got open, once he made the plays, he had trouble holding on to the football. This staff will not tolerate OJT. Once the game happens, you're supposed to be a finished product, whether you're a true freshman or a fifth-year senior. So they're not going to let you make mistakes in the game. They're going to let you make mistakes in practice. That's what practice is for. But they kind of demand execution over the course of the game. Have not heard too much about Caleb Cunningham. He's been in and out of a black jersey this year, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that he didn't get here till the summer. Shakai Mills-Knight doing the same thing. He didn't get here till the summer, swimming a little bit. You honestly need that spring. So we'll see exactly what happens. All right, coming up, our new segment, Ole Miss Trivia, and we want to talk about the 1989 Tulane Ole Miss game that Ole Miss won 38-28. The question is, what Rebel tight end caught the Hail Mary TD winner pass caught with 4 seconds left on the clock versus Tulane in 1989 to win the game 32-28? Which tight end caught the last touchdown pass, TD winner, versus Tulane in 1989 to win 32-28? That was a catch that potentially saved that season, because I think Tulane was 1-5 coming into that game. Ole Miss was like 4-2 coming into that game. Ole Miss needed to win that game. The season would go completely differently if that pass isn't caught. So we'll see exactly how that goes. So thank you again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives. That's why we're the front door of Ole Miss sports. If you don't believe us, search Ole Miss podcast. Anybody that searches that is going to land on this show. Do not forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and comment. It helps the show and it's completely free. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on all of the rapid changes around college football's landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.